Hello, my name is Heather, and I must say it's my deepest regret that I cannot be there with you and that all of you cannot be here in my living room with me. But I'm very, very thankful to still have an opportunity to share these ideas that are so exciting to me with you, and I hope that they can be helpful in encouraging you in singing in your homeschool or in your cottage school or wherever you're able to sing. I wanted to start with a little exercise. I'm going to sing a little line of music and I'm going to do hand signs for some of the sounds that I say, and I want you to listen and see if you recognize what I'm singing. Okay. Mi, re, do, do, mi, so, re, mi, so, la, so, mi, re, do. All right, I'm gonna do it one more time because sometimes hearing it the second time you'll go, oh yeah, okay. Mi, re, do, do, mi, so, re, mi, so, la, so, mi, re, do. Okay, if I were there, I would be asking you to tell me the name, and hopefully some of you would be saying, "Come thou fount of every blessing," and that would be correct. And so if you were able to listen and hear those sounds and to know what they were, then you're starting to see some of what we're working towards doing when we learn solfege. If you are there and if you have a packet that has this song in it, you can go ahead and pull it up. We're gonna look just briefly for some patterns. I'm just gonna warn you up front, this is from the hymnal that we use, and I went ahead and used this version because it has 4-part harmony in it, and it has shape notes. So if you're familiar with either of those, that can be a help for you. But mostly we're just gonna be looking at this first line here of "Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace." And I guess I'm letting you know because mine is an alternate version, and so a couple of the lines are going to be different later when we get to that. But anyway, so if you look here, this is what I just sang to you. I sang mi, re, do, do, mi, so, re, mi, so, la, so, mi, re, do. And I'll be asking you, are there some sounds that you're hearing more than others? And you can kind of think about that. Did you hear any patterns? For most of us to be able to think through and do that, it takes a lot of brain engagement, and we have to use the full habit of our attention. And so that's one thing that we do with solfege. And so what is solfege? If you're unfamiliar with it, it is learning how to read music. But I'm going to start over. What is solfege? It's a way of helping us to learn to sight sing music. Learning how to read music is like learning a foreign language, and you learn it best by cultivating your ear for the sounds that you hear, and then later you learn how to translate that into the notes on the page. And solfege is a tool to help you do that with singing. And it is a unique tool to singing. It's not something that is used so much with piano or violin or any other instrument. The voice doesn't have buttons that you can push and produce specific notes. It's all relative with the voice. And so with the form of solfege that I use, then the pitches are all relative. Okay, so with solfege, you give each note a name. And so that's where the do, re, mi comes in that you may have heard on The Sound of Music. And when we learn solfege, we learn the way those notes relate to one another. Now, in the same way, like when I was a kid, we used to play the board game Wheel of Fortune. And so it helped us to play better by memorizing that E, R, S, T, L, and N are more frequently used letters. So when we're guessing letters that we think might be in a phrase, we're not going to start with Q. You know, we're gonna guess a letter that's gonna show up a lot. And it's the same with these musical notes. And some of these sounds are used a lot more frequently than others. they have different characteristics to them. Some are used a lot as a strong place to land, like do. I mean, you can even see with the symbol for do. This is a strong place to land. And secondarily, so. Some are used more in passing, like fa and ti, which I haven't even sung yet for you. So with the approach that I use, we don't learn them in order of a musical scale, the way The Sound of Music presents it. We learn them in the patterns, the way we see them show up in music, in actual songs. And music is just full of patterns. And so we start with the patterns and the sounds that are the most basic, that will be heard and understood most naturally by children. And then we slowly make it a little bit more complex, and we add a little bit more difficult patterns. Okay, so if you're looking at your O Thou Fount of Every Blessing, then you might see that, and in the handout version, I also have like a single line, and that may be easier for you to see than, this 4-part thing. So whatever you're comfortable looking at. So if you start here, you're gonna see it's just moving in steps. But then here, we skip. We don't just go, in music on the staff, we have lines and spaces. We start kind of skipping over some of those spaces. And then we have a big jump down here. And if you recognize that do is a little triangle, here's a little clue. You can look at the little triangles, and that's going to be our strong place to land. And you might notice that some of the important words are going to be on do, on those little triangles. So grace is going to land on do. And then this line here, praise, is going to land on do. And then even if you look in earlier, there's 2 do's in a row. O thou fount of, so fount, streams of mercy, mercy is on do. And then if you go to the last line, hope is on do, and love is on do. And it's kind of neat the way that tends to work with poetry and music when they're put together in that way. So hopefully you can kind of see that we're finding some patterns in there, and also just the overall form of this song. I don't know if you can see where I wrote in here. We have A, B, and A. And so, it's funny, I pointed this out to somebody who is really familiar with this song, has sung it since babyhood probably, and they did not realize. I said, this first line of music that I just sang for you is only 5 notes. It's 5 notes. And then the second line is identical, and it's the same 5 notes, Here we get a little bit more passing tones, so we're not gonna mess with B section today because we're going really basic. But then again, we come back to A, the same exact line of music. There is no difference in the music, there is in the words. And the same 5 notes. So when you start to learn more and more about solfege and being able to learn this foreign language of music, you see that musically, this hymn that we just did, it's very, very simple. And when you can see those patterns, and so when we study solfege, seeing and hearing those patterns in the music becomes really natural. And Charlotte Mason saw that it had value too. From my handy home education book, you can tell it's much loved. First, in the book, she gives us a challenge. She sees that there is a deficiency in children's music education, and she says, "It is a pity that the musical training of most children is of a random character, that they are not trained, for instance, by carefully graduated ear and voice exercises to produce and distinguish musical tones and intervals." And then later in the same volume, she gives her recommendation, and she says, "I should like, in connection with singing, to mention the admirable educational effects of the tonic sol-fa method. Children learn by it in a magical way to produce sign for sound and sound for sign. That is, they can not only read music, but can write the notes for, or make the proper hand signs for, the notes of a passage sung to them. Ear and voice are simultaneously cultivated." And so, as I said, both of those quotes are from Home Education. And in her 6 volumes, those are really the only 2 places she even mentions solfege. But we can see that it was consistently used in her programs. And I hope that in the next video, I'm going to do a little demonstration, and I hope that will give you some insight as to why it was used and what we can accomplish by learning solfege.